We're going to be in Matthew chapter 2 this morning with a very familiar story. I have struggled with how to handle this month since we decided that we were going to be moving because I know that people come during the month of December expecting to hear a little bit about the birth of Christ. Especially next week, people have that kind of thing in mind. And at the same time, I'm not good enough to blend a farewell sermon and a birth of Christ sermon altogether. Maybe I am, but I kept coming back to it and thinking, how exactly is this going to work? And so I thought what we would do this morning is look at the birth and the visit of the Magi today and tie together some things about Jesus and everything with the church and us leaving and everything next week. And so if you have friends that you know may be coming for Christmas next week, they're still welcome, and I don't think they hopefully will be disappointed by anything they hear. But at the same time, today might be a little more of the usual sermon that you might expect that day. We'll begin in verse 1 here of Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Now, Magi, if you're not in the nativity story mode, is a different word for most of us, and not something that we use a lot. And some of our versions may, instead of Magi, say wise men. It is this group of people that are almost a combination of magicians and philosophers that travel around and they share their wisdom with others, and they have been given this message that this new king is to be born. And so they ask Herod, who is this king and where is he? Now, Herod has a little bit of a problem here because Herod is the king. And so if you could imagine for a minute, I was trying to think of what it would be like this morning if I walked in and a guest, a visitor came in to see about the church, and they said, "I heard you have a new preacher. Is he preaching today?" How awkward that might be. And then how much more awkward it might be if right behind him someone came in a coat and a tie with a Bible under his arm and said, "Hey, I'm the new preacher. Where's my office?" And suddenly to realize that I know I'm going to be replaced because that's how it all works once I'm gone, but that happens once I'm gone. That doesn't happen now. Don't get any ideas for next Sunday. And I thought to myself, how weird would that be to be there and to have this message brought to you that there's a new king in town? Herod is, as I would imagine a lot of kings may be, threatened by the whole idea. Herod was an extravagant, very full of himself kind of leader. The Herodian, one of his palaces that was there nearby, was one of the largest palaces in that part of the world. And he wanted to build this incredible thing so everyone would look up there to him and see how great he was. And so the idea of these wise men, these magicians, and whatever Herod may have thought of them, he did understand that these wise men had knowledge that a lot of folks did not have, and they come in with this message of a new king. They're concerning him because he doesn't really know quite what to do with that. So King Herod heard this, and he's disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. When he had called together the people's chief priests and the teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. And I think this brings us to this question, which is, how do we react to disturbance? Now, we can think of disturbance in lots of ways, and I will admit to you, because of when I was born and the things that I'm interested in and what's going on in our culture this weekend, I immediately think of Darth Vader. Because Darth Vader feels a disturbance in the Force, and Obi-Wan Kenobi feels a disturbance in the Force. And the idea in these Star Wars movies is there is something that is unusual. There is something that is not the status quo. There is something that, as everything is rolling along and moving smoothly, suddenly something is no longer smooth. And they don't know what to do with that. And I think in church, we can do the same thing if we're not careful. We like to be comfortable. We like everything to be the way we count on it. We like for things to be as they are expected. And when it's not that way, we don't always know what to do. When we come in and someone is sitting in our spot, we don't know what to do. When we get a couple or three songs in a row that we're not familiar with, we don't know what to do. When folks come in and they are different than us, we don't always know what to do. And in this case, for Herod and all the people there in Jerusalem, they don't know what to do. Because the idea of this new king, although it has been prophesied for years and years and years, is unexpected to them in this moment. Are we willing to be uncomfortable for the cause of Christ? I read a statement online last week, a quote that someone had made, something along the lines of, as long as Christians are more worried about their own comfort than getting the word to the lost, the church is never going to grow. And I found myself a little taken back by that and almost a little insulted by it, because I thought to myself, well, how dare anyone question what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not? But we can really easily get in those modes if we're not careful. And we become, instead of the Magi seeking out Jesus in the story, we become the Herod of the story that does not want what we're accustomed to be threatened. And so he's uncomfortable and he is disturbed. And I hope when we see disturbance that we react to it in a more God-seeking kind of way. In Bethlehem, in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel. Now, we see something here also about Herod, which is he is not in touch with the word and what is supposed to happen. These things have been written down. He should be aware that there is a king, and this is where the king would come from, but he does not know these things. And for so many of us, part of our disconnection with God and what he does is we're just not aware of what's going on in his word. And if we were more involved in his word, we could recognize more of what he's doing. So this leader, the shepherd, will come. A shepherd, I think, is a different kind of leader. If we, in our climate today, with politics and leadership and things like that, had someone who is a shepherd come out to run for something big, governor, president, whatever it may be, I don't know that most of us would feel like he's qualified. We would think, what does this guy know about leading? And we wouldn't necessarily want to describe our leaders in this way. Now, in a church setting, this is exactly who our leaders are. Now, I told you last week about Denise and all the ways to make her life easier and all the ways she's made my life easier while I worked here. I want to tell you something about our elders this morning. Our elders, or bishops as you see it in Scripture at times, or the other way you see it described, shepherds. This is a shepherd that is coming for us in this story. In our own story here as the Eugene Church of Christ, we have shepherds in our lives that are here to lead us. And too often, we don't recognize the hard work that is being done. We don't recognize the love that is being done with and the spirit in which it is being done. We don't recognize how much they care about this group of people. We are coming up on another month where there is a Monday that is the fifth Monday of the month, I believe. Oh, no, it's not. It's the fifth Monday or fifth Sunday. Anyway, I get my days mixed up. When we have a fifth Monday of the month roll around, we have our elders and ministers meeting on Monday. We pull out a list of all of you. And everyone on this list is there by name, and we divide this list up amongst ourselves, and we spend probably about an hour or so, maybe a little more, praying for each one of you by name. And the interesting thing to me is it's not just God be with Larry, and God be with Shirley, and God be with Darlene, and God be with Roy. With each person, there is an awareness within that room of things going on in your life. Places you may be struggling, places that you have been blessed, things you may want help with, things you are doing around here that we want to see you continue to do, whatever it may be. And not only are you prayed for by name, but there is something about you and something going on in your life that is mentioned by your shepherds to the Father. And I think to myself, every time we do that, this is shepherding. I think of myself as they try to set direction and vision and things that we do and try to oversee what's going on here and try to protect the flock and at the same time help the flock to grow, that they are shepherding. And for each of us, we can do so much more to appreciate what they do. One last thing before I leave this behind. I have worked with elders over the course of time. And I have, before I was in full-time ministry, also submitted to elders at various churches over the course of time. I will tell you that I have never encountered a group of people that have tried so hard to make me a part of what they were doing. I have always been involved in what's going on, and you will find, I would imagine, there are probably among us people that think, he's finally leaving. Now we can finally get to what we want to do. Now, I like to think that's a very small number of people, and most people are thinking, I wish he wouldn't go. We really like those people. but there are always some. I will tell you, you would be shocked to find out that there are very few individual decisions that come out of that room. There are very few individual decisions that come out of our discussions. And almost all the time, we are all in consensus about everything that we do. And sometimes it's Carl's idea, and sometimes it's Roy's idea, and sometimes it's Mike's idea or mine, or sometimes it's yours that has been brought through them. And as those things all come together, the role of the shepherd, the role of this kind of leader, is to do leadership in a different way. One of the drawbacks of it is sometimes you may not even realize who they are. And the reason you don't realize who they are is because they're not wearing a badge, and you don't have to bow at their feet, and you don't have to make sure they're happy so you can be happy and things like that. We all just kind of do what we do. And so much of what they do is behind the scenes. But I will tell you that among us we have shepherds, and that we are blessed by that. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them and the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I may too go and worship him." Such a different day and time where he's trying to discover all these things. And when the star appeared, I was thinking about this story the other night as I pulled my phone out, and I pulled up an app on my phone that is the International Space Station Detector. And you can punch on this app, and it will tell you with a map of the sky and timing when the International Space Station will be crossing overhead. Now, living in Eugene, we don't see it a lot because usually we see gray clouds overhead. But every now and then when you get a clear night, and I will notice stars, and I will think, oh, I wonder if it's today. And I will pull this thing out, and sure enough, it will say at this particular time it's going to appear, it's going to be in this part of the sky, it's going to go across in this direction, and after 2 minutes and 42 seconds, it will disappear again. And I am amazed that someone has figured that out, and it is on my phone, and I can point my phone where it says it's going to be because my phone also has a compass, and I can follow these people orbiting Earth all the way across. In this day and time, he relied on these folks to explain, this is when it happened, and this is where we're going. But his motives are very much not the right one, because he tells them to go out and search. And this search they're going to do in their minds is to help him find this king so he can go and worship. But in his mind, he has something very different in mind. Because he is still threatened. What he wants to search out is the problem so he then can get rid of that problem. And again, we can find ourselves so easily in this mode where we want to search out the thing that we do not like and make sure that we can do away with it or change it. And too often we miss Jesus in the midst of that. And we miss what God is trying to show us in the midst of that. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. When we come into contact with Jesus, when we finally find him as we seek him, our response to that should be joy like we cannot explain. If your life is not joyous because of Christ, I think you're missing an element of this. Now, that's not to say there will not be struggles. That's not to say there will not be hard times. That's not to say that negatives will come your way and negative people will come your way and there will be difficulties. But in the midst of all of that, when we think about what God has done through sending his Son to be with us, we should be overjoyed. We should be overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child was with his mother Mary, and they bow down and worship him, because the other response beyond just being overjoyed is to bow down and worship. And this bowing down and worship, by the way, is not something we do for an hour and 10 minutes here on Sunday morning. That's part of it. But this bowing down and worship to God should be a regular part of our lives. We should be in our minds and in our hearts singing the songs that we sing. We should be praying his glory. We should be telling people about what he does. We should take time to be thankful for the things that he is doing in our world and in our lives, and even for the struggles that he brings our way. Our worship to him goes on day after day throughout our lives. They worshiped him, and they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And by the way, gold, frankincense, and myrrh is why we get this idea that there are 3 wise men. Just a little footnote here. We don't know how many wise men there were. There could be the one, like I am so often at a party, that forgot the gift. and is going to have to send a gift card later. There could be multiple wise men. There could be multiple people bringing frankincense and myrrh. We just don't know. I think it's 3 because of the 3 gifts and because it fits better in the nativity scene. Otherwise, we have too many pieces we have to wrap up and put away. All right. Having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. And our question, I think this morning, that goes in with our class from earlier today and from our giving just a few minutes ago is, what gifts do we bring? All of us have a different level of ability to bring gifts, whether it's giving of ourselves and our time and our talents and the spiritual gifts that we have, or whether it's giving financially, or whether it's giving things or service. What are we bringing to give? Because I will tell you, if you bring nothing to give, you are missing an element of who God calls us to be. These people bring gifts, and I think Andrew said it really well in a comment in class this morning, because when we think of what God has done, when we think of what the church does, when we think of the sacrifice that is made, all we can do is give something out of thankfulness. It's our response. When someone has done something really great for us, we just want to give something to them. I have thoroughly enjoyed, during the course of this year, Secret Sisters. Now, I will admit to you, normally I get nothing from that. Occasionally somebody will give my wife a gift that it may not be her first thought of something, and I might try to steal part of it. But for the most part, it's interesting to watch. It covers a table back there, but it's just another thing that we do. I'm glad people appreciate it. I'm also incredibly glad there's no Secret Brothers, because I would forget about it, and we would all exchange golf balls and coffee, I guess. I don't know. I have enjoyed this year of Secret Sisters because my wife drew Beth as her secret sister. Now, if you don't know, if you're visiting or if you just haven't figured out the connection yet, Beth is my wife's great aunt. Beth and Leland were a big part of the reason we came out here in the first place. They told us about the church. They were consistent and yet friendly about how great it would be if we were here. They connected us with leadership here. I've always been very thankful for them. And although it's hard to leave here, and it really is, I hope you guys understand that, y'all understand that. Although it's hard to leave here, one of the blessings of having been here was the opportunity to spend that time with Leland before he was gone, and to spend that time with Beth. And I have enjoyed watching my wife having fun at a different level buying gifts this year. And she had fun with whoever the other Secret Sisters were, and it was neat to try to figure things out. But she looked at Beth, and there was a level of thankfulness for Beth that was different because of the things that Beth does. And Beth and Leland have both taken very good care of our family during the time we've been here. We have been included in family things that have opened up a new side of family to me that I never had. And I look at what has happened here during that year as she's giving the gifts, and I think of the gifts brought here, that we have this ability to give to someone who has blessed us. We have this ability to give to someone who has given something to us that we can never repay. Excuse me. And for too many of us, we talk ourselves out of it. Or we convince ourselves it's just not a big deal, or we convince ourselves that what I have to give is not significant enough, so it really just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And I will tell you that as much fun as Beth may have had receiving some pretty cool gifts during the course of the year, my wife had an awful lot of fun buying those things. And an awful lot of fun thinking of, I could see Beth liking this thing. I could see Beth appreciating whatever this is. And for us, I think we should recognize that the gifts that we bring, whether they are big or small, expensive or cheap, a little bit going in that plate or a large amount going in that plate, they're gifts that allow us to show our appreciation for God. And that is every bit as much a benefit as us as it is to Him. And I will tell you beyond that, it is far more a benefit for us than it is to Him. God does not need your money. God created all of this. He could undo all of this. God can have whatever it is that He wants to have. The opportunity to give is something that is for us, not for Him. Now, by the way, if there is some gift planned in the back, this has nothing to do with that. I have no idea. But this is about us, and this is about God. Are we giving? Are we being generous when it comes to God? And if we're not, why is that? And the example I think we see set here by the wise men. We are seeing this king coming into our world who is going to change everything in ways that we do not completely understand. And our response to that is we are going to give to Him. So this morning, There's a new king in the world in this chapter, and there should be a new king in your life. Who is in charge for you? Because so frequently it's us, and we're trying so desperately to be in charge, and so often we don't do a very good job of it. And we tend to mess things up and take control of the wrong things, and God would like to be the king in our lives. And he cares enough about us and about being that king in our lives that he sent his own son to live among us. And as we mentioned several times during the course of this story, today and on other days, the story doesn't end with that infant in the manger. That infant will grow, and Luke 52 will tell us that he'll grow in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and men. And he will continue mature, and he will teach, and he will heal, and he will live among people, and he will die for them, and he will rise again. And now he lives in heaven with God, waiting for us. He wants us to be with him in the same way that he came to be with us. And this morning, if you are not with him, then today is the day to go with him and to be, as a result, overjoyed, for your life to be changed. You can accept him, you can confess his name, you can repent of the life you live, and you can be baptized to walk in a new life. This morning, if you have at one time followed that road with him and you have just gotten away from his path, it's a great day to start over. It's a great day to change the way that you're walking, to bring your gift of you back to him, and to start walking that new life again. Or this morning, if there are just things that you need your church family to share in, things you need us to pray about, we are happy to do that. The hard part of this story that we didn't go all the way into at the end of this chapter is when Herod finds out what goes on, the wise men go off in their own direction because they figure out what Herod's all about through this dream, this vision. Herod's answer to that is not to finally give in to a power that's obviously above him. Herod's answer to that is to try his best to wipe this kid out. He's going to have put to death all the small boys in that town so that he can make sure his power is not threatened. We have the opportunity this morning to respond to God in any number of ways. We can respond the way that so many have over the course of time, and maybe we have at times, which is, I just don't want anything to do with that. It's always a disappointment. He asks too much. People aren't real. Church is not what it's supposed to be. I don't want anything to do with that. Or we can respond in the way that these wise men do and bring our gifts to him and recognize that there is a new king in town, and that is the king we want to follow. If you'd like to follow that king today, or if there's any way we can help you, please come